So again, given that the 2025 election is so deeply important, what can we do about it? Can folks either raise your hand or give a thumbs up reaction if your congregation has already signed the pledge to be 100% voting? All right, a solid third, maybe half. 100% voting congregations are a commitment you can make as a faith community to encourage all of your members to vote. Again, this is what we always want to do. You are saying, as a 100% voting congregation, I'm going to do 6 things. Those are: develop a plan to make sure every eligible member is in your congregation is registered to vote. That can be standing outside of service on a Friday or a Sunday or whatever day and saying, yo, are you all registered? Come stand by my computer and fill out this sheet if you're not. It could be, and I know Karen S., I owe you data on information on this. VICPP has a partnership with the Virginia Civic Engagement Table such that we don't use your data for anything but running the list. But if you want to share your membership list, we can tell you who is registered to vote and who's not. And even if they're a consistent voter or an inconsistent voter, because again, only 60% of people who are registered remember to vote in gubernatorial elections. I will send information about all of this in our follow-up. So thing 1, make sure everybody's registered. Thing 2, distribute information about ways to vote. That includes voting by mail, absentee ballots. You can submit a form online or mail in a form requesting an absentee ballot. And that just makes sure if you're sick on election day or out of town, your ballot and vote still get counted. You could also do early voting. So early voting starts on Friday. Virginia has one of the longest early voting periods in the nation, 45 days. So it'll start Friday the 19th and continue through Saturday, November 1st. Also in-person voting, and we want to make sure also to spread information about not only ways to vote, but voter registration and the fact that you can, Virginia now has same-day voter registration. Now you'll only be casting a provisional ballot, but it's still an immense step forward for people who might struggle with getting their data together, or if they move between now and the election, those sorts of things. Joan, you have a question. Do you want to ask it now or after I finish the 6?
After the 6.
Yes. Okay, thank you. So that's number 2, how to vote, and share that with your faith community. 3 is to promote the sacred privilege of voting. Some faith traditions say voting is a civic sacrament. It's a way of bringing about God's kingdom on earth, or a way of making sure that our values are realized in the world. There are resources from a ton of faith traditions about this. When you sign up for 100% voting, we send you sermon aid and sample bulletin announcements and a bunch of stuff. So you can personalize that sacred privilege to your own tradition, but remembering that there is more than just a nice thing to do, like brushing your teeth. There is a moral obligation to vote as well. Number 4, learn about your local candidates and educate your congregation about local candidates. This could be by sharing voter guides, participating in candidate forums, or a bunch of other ways. But finding out who's on the ballot is a really important part to make sure you're an informed voter. 5 is participating in community-wide efforts to register voters and get people to the polls. Again, this is just broadening numbers 1 and 2. But there is some exciting stuff you can do with Souls to the Polls or hosting events, which is great fun. And then finally, engaging those who are not eligible to vote to participate in civic life. So that includes folks who are under 18, people who are immigrants and not yet citizens, as well as folks who maybe have not had voting rights restored after interaction with the justice system. We still want to make sure that members of our faith community who fall into those categories are engaged in this 100% voting commitment. So those are the 6 steps. Like I said, I will share this sheet so you can read the pledge and sign the pledge and dig in on a bunch of other information. And from VICPP, we send you the toolkit around 100% voting. We send you a giant 3 foot by 7 foot banner to hang outside your faith community, proclaiming your status as 100% voting faith community. And as I mentioned, running membership lists through the voting records, access to some additional social media posts, et cetera, et cetera. So that is 100% voting. Joan, go ahead.
Yes. So one of the pieces around education that we're having trouble finding really good resources for, that, the average voter does not understand the difference between what the federal government can do, what the state government can do, what the local government can do. And so when you say something like, this is a really important election, I need things that make that more concrete. So, I mean, I could do that for the city of Hampton. I know because I used to work there, I know the kinds of things that they do. But so it's both a matter of, especially now, and especially with this one not being mixed up with the federal election. And I've noticed most of the candidate materials, the candidates don't even seem to understand what it is they're voting for when you look at what they say they're for. Some of it isn't stuff the state government does. So anyway, that's the challenge. Where do you find something that succinctly says that these are the kinds of things the state can do? And these are specific issues that our state is struggling with and that are apt to be on the legislative thing coming up in this session. Do you have that, or can you refer us to somewhere that has it? And then, I mean, for the local ones, at least something generic that says these are the kind of thing local governments vote on. Land use laws, local government.
Yep.
Whether Virginia participates in environmental things, that goes to the state government, that kind of thing. So really concrete examples of what it is that you should care about in this election.
Absolutely. I love that. That resource probably exists somewhere, but I've not seen it articulated quite as clearly as what you're asking for. That's something I think would be very helpful to lots of folks. So I am writing it on my list to look into and potentially create. If I get it done by Wednesday, I will send it out in this week's liaison
Your
follow-up
materials
call.
are excellent, but when I looked through them, that wasn't there. And so,
No, you're right.
Okay.
That's something I haven't really thought as deeply about. So I appreciate you bringing it up.
And including things like the impact of the state elections on court selections. The sheriffs and law enforcement, and that the budget's a really big deal this year. And what are the kind of budget things that are coming up that the state is going to vote on? What's going to happen with people on Medicaid in Virginia is going to come down to the state at this point. And so that's the kind of stuff we're looking for.
It's going to be a whole adventure. Yep,
okay.
That's true.
Thank you.
Thank you. Andy, I see your hand up as well.
Yeah, I was just going to share that I totally agree with you, Joan. Excellent point. And we recognize that I'm also affiliated with a group, a nonprofit in Northern Virginia called Cornerstones. And we identified that as a challenge to getting out the vote. And we're producing a video about why people should care about this election, specifically focused mostly on the governor, lieutenant governor, and attorney general roles. Why people in Northern Virginia should care about these offices and why it matters to them. And this idea actually came from Ken Plum, who's a member of our board at Cornerstones, and he is a former delegate from Virginia, and he's actually the longest serving delegate in the history of Virginia. And so he suggested it, and we're in the process with his help. He happens to also have been a history teacher, trying to put that video together. No promises that we're going to get it out. I think we're still working on the script, but exactly 100% share what you're saying, Joan.
That sounds like an excellent resource. If you do get the video together, send it my way as well.
I will do.
Beautiful. Yeah. So that does sound like a great resource. And things like saying, early voting starts on Friday. One thing Robert, our civic engagement coordinator, says is that, for us, election day is not November 5th, it's September 19th, because the earlier you vote, the less likely it is that you get hit by a bus and are in a coma on election day. It makes sure that your voice is heard. Hopefully none of us end up experiencing something like that, but plans can be thwarted, and so it's good to be as prepared as possible. Any other questions on 100% voting congregations? You're right, election day is November 4th, not November 5th. My brain is apparently stuck in last year's life. So one thing that I will mention is that I've now put 100% voting in the chat. One thing I want to mention is that the voting process, or rather, joining 100% voting for some congregations is very simple. The pastor says yes, and we're a yes. Or the social justice chair says yes, and we're a yes. Other congregations, you need to go through a whole process. I'm thinking, Andy, of you and a lot of other Jewish congregations and synagogues that you need the board's approval, which might only meet once a month, once a quarter. And so somebody has to vet the commitment and then bring it to the board, and then the board needs to vote, and then somebody has to say yes, and then you can sign on. So I understand that this can be a heavy lift for some faith communities. That said, we're already at we have 75 congregations who've already signed on, and we are dreaming of getting up to 200 congregations who make the 100% voting commitment. If you need any support from me to make that case to your clergy or leadership or whoever might make that decision, I am happy to provide it. So just let me know what makes sense. And Karen also put in the chat, there's a few constitutional amendments that will be in play at the state level. Yes, I will dig in on that soon, really more likely next year, because those are things that the state legislature will vote on in January or February of 2026. And then if they pass the legislature, they will be on your ballot in November of 2026. So it's a 3-stage process, but whether or not they get passed along to the people to decide is a question for this year's legislature. So it is something that to think about when you look at the House of Delegate candidate. All right, 100% voting, lots to say, lots to do. I will again send you resources, but if you need support in talking to clergy or committees, I'm your gal. Onward and upward. I want to mention last year, VICPP ran a big Souls to the Polls event in Richmond. Richmond had early voting on a Sunday last year. This year, they're only doing it on Saturdays, but we took a Sunday and we had a party at 3 different congregations that were each right across the street from an early voting location, and we encouraged people to come out. We had DJs, we had food, and if folks showed us their I voted sticker, they got free food. It was great fun. This year, we're building on the success of that event and hoping to have Souls to the Polls in a couple of different places throughout the state. We will be having one in Richmond on a Saturday. We will likely be working closely with some partners, particularly congregations who have childcare in their facilities. And we will be sending it, but we don't have our sites confirmed yet. So we will be sending out more information about that in the next week or two. And I will keep you in the loop, definitely do some advertising if you are close to one of those states. There is in the toolkit that I'll send you if you sign up for 100% voting congregations, there is a little guide on how to host your own Souls to the Polls event, whether that be kind of a caravan to the polls, helping folks with limited mobility drive on election day, or whether that be hosting a festival during the early voting season. Both are fun options. Anybody have questions on Souls to the Polls? Yes, Miss Bradley.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, I was there. The one that I went there that Sunday. I went to church and I went over there because I know some of the representatives that were out there, and it was excellent. The one that was hosted in Southside Virginia. It was excellent.
Thank you so much. I'm glad you enjoyed it. It was a lot of work, but a lot of fun.
Mhm.
So hoping to replicate it. Okay, cool. Love it. I mentioned that we're doing this at sites, particularly with congregations that also offer childcare. A lot of faith communities do have preschool that use their facilities, which makes a ton of sense. Often in worship spaces, they only use the building on a weekend, and childcare tends to use it on weekdays. So it's a nice partnership. I do want to share one more resource around this. We're members of the Virginia Promise Partnership, which is a coalition of groups working to increase access to childcare, particularly for lower income families. So one of the values that we're promoting within the General Assembly next year, as well as in our civic engagement this year, is encouraging people who might struggle to pay for childcare to vote and to be educated about candidates and to vote their values. Virginia Promise Partnership actually put together a toolkit for helping childcare facilities and childcare facilities run by congregations to register parents to vote. Both registering parents and again, sharing information about voting, all that jazz. I am delighted to share that toolkit with you. I'll throw it in the pile of links I always include in my liaison emails.
Mhm.
But if you specifically want that, I am happy to send that toolkit your way. Send me a note or send my colleague Ramon a note. Because again, just we want to make sure people in Virginia and our values are represented and our priorities for those who are in office this coming year. One more thing. So I mentioned earlier the postcards. We want to just increase voter turnout, and therefore we are sending postcards to registered voters who are either infrequent voters or who might need the reminder. Anne, go ahead.
Regarding the postcards, we are planning a couple of postcard writing parties at church for our people could get together. We'll sit around tables and maybe have a snack or something. But on Sunday, a couple of Sunday afternoons, I think we're scheduled for the 21st and the 28th of September, so that people don't feel how do I do this or what? But we're going to get together and kind of
I like that. That's good.
a fun time and also
Yeah,
kind of guiding people who might be a little bit, what am I going to do?
Mhm.
yes,
Good idea.
absolutely. That sounds wonderful.
Mhm.
And idea. Yes, that sounds wonderful. So when Virginia Interfaith sends a postcard packet, we send 100 postcards, which can be intimidating for an individual to write. Some people do it. I am not one of them. So the idea of doing a postcard party with a group at your faith community is a great one and is one we encourage people to do. They come with instructions, they come with a script, they come with labels. It's a great thing. Okay, cool. Love it. Thank you. So I am going to go ahead and share a couple of things I find you helpful on voting resources. So as I mentioned, a couple important dates to know. Early voting starts Friday. The deadline to request a vote by mail ballot is October. Ay Dios, ¿dónde fue? Oh no, the deadline to update your voter registration so you do not have to vote with the provisional ballot is October 14th. The deadline to request a vote by mail ballot is October 24th. And the deadline to vote is 7:00 p.m. on Tuesday, November 4th. If you are in line by 7 p.m., you get to vote. But also, if you vote before then, you don't have to stress about it. You can come over my house and watch the election returns. So those are some important dates. I also want to share this website, elections.virginia.gov, is really helpful. You can check your voter registration, especially if you've moved. You want to confirm that your voter registration is updated. You can do that right there. You can even update your voter registration online. Another great resource is vote411.org. That is run by the League of Women Voters, which, Karen, as you mentioned, as your original name said, I see that you are a member of the League over in Williamsburg. And I'm sure we have other League members or League affiliates on here. VICPP often partners with the League of Women Voters. We're a nonpartisan group, so are they, and also a lot of our values align. So vote411.org will let you click through and see those upcoming dates, who's on the ballot, and they do have some voter guides for some races, but not everyone has filled out the response questionnaires. So elections.virginia.gov and vote411 are both incredibly useful for getting information on where and how to vote, where and how to register, and how to check your information. Karen S., you had your hand up.
I was just gonna say, like, the league people try really hard to get responses from all the candidates, so it's not that they don't try. It's just, you don't get them.
Oh no, League, yeah, 100%. Y'all are great. A couple more resources. So voter guides are only as useful as the information in them. And the League has some great voter guides for the races where folks responded. But another group that has been fascinating and delightful at getting responses to their questionnaires is Cardinal News. Not sure if folks are familiar. Cardinal News is an online nonprofit newsroom that focuses on Southwest and Southside Virginia. And they're one of my favorite news sources. However, their voter guide is really cool because you can look up your city or county, and then they've sent a questionnaire to every single statewide candidate, that's governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general, and all House of Delegates candidates. They've also sent the questionnaires to every single local candidate in Southwest and Southside Virginia. But they have even local races, which is a hard thing to find in a voter guide. The Cardinal News voter guide is one that I often rely on because they are nonpartisan and they have such good data. The last resource I want to share is the Virginia Public Access Project, VICPP. Another great resource for information on elections and on candidates. VICPP is just fascinating. They're a nonprofit that reports on campaign finance contributions. They sometimes do voter guides, but they did a really great job about helping folks understand the redistricting process a couple of years ago. And so if you switched who your state delegate or state senator is, VICPP is probably a good resource for you. They have some information on candidates and they do a lot of data visualization. So in terms of historic voter turnout in a district, or how often does this candidate vote with their party versus against their party? Or how often does this current legislator pass bills? Anyway, VICPP is another resource I find fascinating because I'm a complete nerd. Use it if you find it helpful. And I will contextualize all of these in my follow-up email as well. Okay, like I said, there's a lot. Any questions on resources, voter guides, education, finding out more? Also pay attention to your local newspaper or community forums, because there may well be local candidate forums happening in your area. And you want to be aware of those because literally, okay, my favorite story, 2017. It was a year just like this year, the year right after a presidential year, where we were electing governor and House of Delegates. And there was a House of Delegates seat where it was legitimately a tie. Exactly the same number of people voted for the Democratic candidate as voted for the Republican candidate. it was a tie. And they did what the Virginia Constitution says you're supposed to do in that situation. They literally pulled a name out of a hat to determine who got to represent that district in Virginia. One vote could have made a difference. This was after like 3 recounts. One vote would have changed the outcome of that election. So every single vote matters. But to me, especially in House of Delegates election, we have in the last 10 years an example where one vote made that difference. So, and you can think of it either way, right? One vote showing up, one more vote showing up for either candidate would have swung the scale. One person staying home and saying, you know, my vote doesn't really matter, would have flipped it the other direction. So it's just such an incredibly weighty year for us. Okay, getting off my soapbox. Questions, comments, concerns? All right. Well, in that case, I mean, I am so grateful for all of you being here, so grateful for the witness of justice and of civic engagement you give on your own and through your faith communities. As always, do not hesitate to reach out if I can be helpful. And please do help spread the word, because I can make a million social media posts. You know that I mean it from the heart, but your next door neighbor's never heard of me before. People believe people. Relationships matter. So make sure folks actually have a real plan to vote. Make sure the people that you care about are paying attention to who's on the ballot and who's representing the issues they care about. That's all I've got for today. I really appreciate you guys spending time, and we even have 5 minutes before 1. Yeah, happy to hang out and just shoot the breeze, but I'm also happy to let you go. So